Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Alex Boone, Managing Director of Botani. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hey, how are you, David? Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. I also encourage you to subscribe to our daily newsletter so you can get it delivered to your inbox first. Alex, I always like to start with a little bit of background, get to know the person a little bit. What was it that brought you to the cannabis industry?
Yeah, look, I kind of been in the cannabis business indirectly for many, many years based on some of the products we've sold to some of the customers that we have. But primarily, I've been in the paper business for the past 22 years. And the mothership, so to speak, of Botani, SWM International, has been in the business for over 400 years. From a rolling paper perspective, in fact, last year we just celebrated 150 years of our factory in France that produces rolling papers for the industry. So we really have been around for quite some time. But if we were to kind of talk about how I got in directly to the cannabis industry, it goes back to a story, so to speak, of me sitting on the beach on the Panhandle of Florida, sitting next to a family beside us, and this young college person was going to work in Colorado. Well, he was going to go work for a cannabis farm. And I said, "Hey, what do you do with your byproduct?" He goes, "I don't know. I think we burn it." I said, "Well, I can use that to make paper." And that's how the ideas started churning. That was back in 2014 when Colorado first went. And we're like, wow, maybe we can do something with this. Wind the clock a little bit, because certainly we are a public corporation. We have to do things that are spot on, that are legal. Wind the clock to the Farm Bill, and there you go. Industrial hemp. We can take that from the cannabis plant, from hemp production for CBD extraction, and we can take that flower and turn that into paper. So that's really how we dove headfirst into the industry of creating new products as rolling accessories for the industry.
But you say you've been doing rolling papers for 150 years. Did that start, was that primarily tobacco at first? And then when did you start seeing a little bit of overlap in that cannabis?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We started from a tobacco perspective. But certainly based on demand throughout the world on tobacco, as it's been declining over the years, rolling papers has not. And certainly there's been a migration from finished cigarettes into rolling your own tobacco products. But at the same time, as cannabis became more and more and larger, we see a larger usage of especially the ultra lightweight, transparent style papers. So you could see over the years how that increase was occurring to the lighter style papers, where less is more, so to speak. The more transparent, the more you can see your flower, the more that the customers you knew which the base was, which was more cannabis consumption.
So in the time frame from when you had the conversation with the hipster on the beach to the Farm Bill, were you a little frustrated because you saw an opportunity to really help the industry, but due to the public nature of the company, you really couldn't move on it?
Yeah, and I think that's pretty apropos with a lot of companies, big corporations, who see the opportunity to bring new products to the industry. Look, we have big corporations. We have to follow rules, regulations, just like anyone else would do. But certainly going to something to be less conservative in a conservative-minded corporate America, so to speak. We needed to assure ourselves that we were going to go into it knowing that things were legal, I's dotted, T's crossed. So that's where the Farm Bill really helped us out in order to have the platform that's here in the United States that can produce this paper from flower and move forward with it in a legal manner.
Even after the Farm Bill, was there a little bit of apprehension to jump into the industry?
Oh, there always is. But look, I mean, from a legality and from a product perspective, what we're selling here is 100% legal products. We're selling components, which is paper components, to an industry for brand owners to create products like blunt wraps, hemp wraps, cones, booklets, rolling papers for booklets, all those things. So we're not actually selling to the end consumer. We're selling components to someone who ultimately would. So we don't have that issue of, oh, we have to answer of our finished product to the consumer. But nonetheless, we still take an approach. We want to be legal, and that's why we also are being very conservative. However, we also felt by creating the brand Botani, we needed to have a singular voice to cannabis. We just separate ourselves from our legacy tobacco, yet take all that rich history and expertise in manufacturing and scaling expertise and bring that to this industry. And that's what we've done. And by having a dedicated team, dedicated brand, and types of papers, we can really focus and do that and really listen to what the cannabinoid consumer wants. I like to get feedback from the consumer, like to know what they like so that we can help create new products for converters and brand owners so they can ultimately bring their product to market.
When did you launch Botani, and are there firewalls in place to sort of protect the bigger corporation from the subsidiary?
Yeah, we launched Botani in February of 22 officially. We had been working within the SWM organization prior to that, but didn't launch the specific brand. That's kind of how we felt we needed to do that. As far as firewalls, no, look, I mean, we're above board. We're operating with products that are 100% legal. We're not selling direct to a consumer. So there's no firewalls as far as billing or anything like that. Okay. We do as we would normally operate.
Okay. I mean, and that makes sense. It's just, I understand sometimes, in a bigger corporation, people at the top, like a little more insulation. But I want to know how you're making paper from flower. Tell me about the process.
Well, we invented a process back in the 50s that enabled us to take tobacco scraps and trimmings and things like that and turn them back into a homogeneous sheet that the brand owner and blenders could use to blend products from one crop year to the next. Being a virgin product tobacco, it varies year to year, just like wine does. It varies year to year. You have to have a certain blend consistency in order to get the same taste in every time. So what turned into first was something to recycling, then became, hey, this is a must-have to make sure there's consistency from one year to the next. We wind the clock to now, we make this process using hemp flower like we would tobacco leaves. We do the same thing with hemp, and enables us to have a nice homogeneous sheet that's consistent, same quality each and every time. So whether you have it in a blunt wrap, a cone, or as a hemp filler to make a hemp cigarette, you can do the same. It's a nice medium to be able to blend to dose either CBD, THC if you like, dose flavors to get a consistent blend each and every time so you can make a product.
Okay.
And that's where our process comes into place.
Did your process have to be re-engineered to work with cannabis flower compared to working with tobacco?
There's a few things that we had to do to keep them separate. But yeah, for the most part, the process was in place. So we have the ability to scale without telling all the little know-how secrets. Yeah, there were some things we had to adjust, but for the most part, our process has been tried and true for many years.
As a raw material, is cannabis a harsher material to work with than tobacco, or is it fairly comparable?
What do you mean by harsh?
Well, like, I mean, just because when people talk about processing cannabis flower, it's stickier, it's messier. So I didn't know if there were any issues on that side in terms of processing it as a raw material to create the paper versus doing the same with tobacco.
Well, I wouldn't say so much for creation that goes into some of the secret sauce that we have in order that we handle this with. But for an end consumer, as an example, let's take our hemp filler. If a guy wants to make a hemp stick, flower can be very sticky. And today's equipment that makes cigarettes, you can't run the same speeds using 100% flour. You can't do it. It doesn't work. It gets too sticky, gums the machines up. The equipment manufacturers for tobacco have done a wonderful job. There's many good equipment companies out there that have made equipment that's modified to handle cannabis, whether it be hemp and or THC-based cannabis, that can do that. However, we have this medium, the hemp filler, that used in 100% format, you can run at speed, at higher speeds, without the worry. The stickiness isn't there, but the flavor, the taste, the dosability is all there. And you can use that to either as 100%, or you can use it to blend into a specific one, like I said before, for tobacco. You decide you want to put a certain percentage in to help blend and create some consistency. It's a great way to do it.
The company Botani recently launched smooth blunt wraps that are hemp-based. What was the sort of process from napkin sketch through the end of development to bring this product to market?
Yeah, so when we originally launched, we launched our hemp wraps, and those were predominantly for cigarillo style. You want to run a stick on a machine. I can show you an example. As an example, a stick like this, like a cigarette, looks like a cigarette, but this is our wrap. That was how it was originally designed. Very much like we do for tobacco, that's how we started. We then realized, hey, we want to have some blunt wrap capabilities. So self-sticking, self-licking. So we created formulations that would allow for that. One of the things that the consumer, though, loves the natural aspect, loves the complementary taste to the cannabis that they're consuming. That's something that hadn't been for tobacco nor paper can give. But this nice complementary taste, they wanted a look that looked like something that was a little bit smoother as well. So how do you combine the great taste, the slow burn, which I forgot to mention before, the machinability, yet a look that looks like, say, my blunt of old from that I take a cigar and I'll blunt it. How do I make it look like that? So we developed a process internally that would allow us to get an even more uniform looking sheet and not sacrifice the rest of the taste aspects and the look taste aspects that we had invented with the original sheet. And thus we have as I have a little bobinette here, this is kind of how our paper comes. This is much smaller. Imagine a roll that kind of comes out about like this.
Yeah.
And a nice smooth appearance here versus our traditional one where you can see a little bit more of the fiber, a little rougher in texture. All are different that people like, but we listen to the consumer and the customers, the converters themselves. What do you like? This is what we've launched. So thus was born Botani Smooth.
So are any of your products direct to consumer, or is everything go to manufacturers that are manufacturing the products?
Yes, it's all B2B. So
B2B,
we're not selling a direct to consumer, making a finished cone as an example and putting in a package. So we sell to those converters who do that. We speak to a lot of brand owners who either are vertically integrated or those who are not, and we try to marriage those. So if you're a very experienced brand owner, a lot of those guys are typically vertically integrated. They have their own processes. They know how to make their own items. They've got supply chains all over the world. Others smaller who are just trying to get started, we speak to them. We try to teach how they can go about getting things done and creating new brands, new blends and different styles. And then we make referrals to the right guys who can make those products for them. So we also have a network of different converters in the market that we like to refer to as well. that will, bring their products to life.
When you say converters, are you talking like white labelers or co-packers?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So a guy who would say put it into a booklet.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know if it was that or if you had like preferred equipment manufacturers.
No, it would take this to put it into that,
Right.
as an example, or into a finished cone, of course.
Right. Well, so in previous conversations that I've had with people, one of the biggest issues with paper products is consistency, especially because there are such tight regulations when it comes to weights and how everything is measured. How do you go about making sure that you offer a consistent product so that way, some of these products don't fall out of spec?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the age-old truth of any kind of manufacturing process, especially with natural products. So we have a very thorough chain of custody process. Well, one thing we found coming into the hemp flower world, having the first plantings being in 2019, there's a very inexperienced supply chain out there, almost having to create a new function for what do we do with an extractor who has this product that we want to do. They didn't know what to do with it. So we had to teach them, here's what we need. I need your certifications from your farm. I need your certifications for the product coming in. I need your certifications for your product coming out. I need to make sure that I know exactly where this comes from. Number one, that it was legal to start with. And number two, that it passes all of the necessary requirements for regs and pesticides, et cetera, that you must have for the final product that our owners are going to do. So we have a very massive testing protocol, incoming raw materials, as well as post on our raw materials once they've completed and gone through the process. We've taken that from our years of experience in manufacturing for the tobacco world. We're very experienced at that. It's a very highly regulated industry. And we know how to work within that to provide scaled products to our customers. We're bringing that know-how to this. And although it's not as mature yet, and some of the legislation that out there is, up and down, every state might be different here and there because there's lack of federal oversight, we're still helping our customers manage within that by making a consistent product every time. So does it mean with a natural product that potential waste could be higher? Absolutely. But better to have that than to have it on the shelf. So we have a good protocol to take care of that.
What are some of the other issues that you ran into working with an inexperienced supply chain, and how frustrating was that? Like, man, we haven't had these issues for like 150 years, and here we are back at ground zero.
Well, look, everyone in the industry has been very cooperative because I think that's the one thing. We've always had good cooperation because new farmers, new extractors, they all want to do business, right? They all want a way to be successful. So the can-do attitude is out there. I can tell you a lot of really good people out there wanting to do it proper. Well, it comes down to also resources. So in some cases, monetary resources are scarce, right? So we will do a lot of the testing. We're on behalf where previously we might have our suppliers do that on our behalf. In a more mature range or supply chain, that's going to be expected to always be there. So we're teaching some of the things and protocols that we need that they can instill, whether it's be supply to us or supply to someone else. People have been very, very open-minded about those processes.
What has the demand been like for hemp-based paper products in the cannabis industry?
Well, as you can imagine, a very nice spike during COVID time. So really a lot of growth. The timing was good, so to speak, for the industry to come to somewhat of a mature status over the past couple of years. Demand is extremely, extremely high. We've seen kind of a little bit of a lull here from the 2021 at the peak of the COVID related purchases in the market, but we're still seeing that 14% roughly growth is what we're looking at for this year. So demand is there. You don't have that 30, 50, 80% growth right now. Some of the more mature states, as you know, are on that steady growth pattern, but not as high of a rate, say, as a newly recreational state would have, with 80% to 100% of growth year over year. So we're seeing that leveling off a little bit. We see nationwide probably the 14% growth as we've seen in the cannabis world. So,
Okay. Are consumers willing to pay more for a commodity product like better paper?
yeah, I wouldn't call Botani commodity, and that's one of the things that why we believe that Botani deserved its name and not under the SWM umbrella. Not only because we need to separate ourselves and be cannabis focused, but we truly believe we had a product that was different than what we offered day in and day out. And that differential was, number one, it's made of hemp flower. Who's making a paper that's made of hemp flower? Well, there's not many people who are doing that. Number two, the taste was so over the top complimentary than what we ever expected, that those that use it will appreciate their flower that they're buying even more. Why buy expensive flower and then go inexpensive on the delivery device?
Right.
And that delivery device in this particular case is our hemp wraps made into cones and or booklets or what have you. So we feel very good that we've created a premium experience for those who want their premium flower. Of course, we have a traditional white paper, 14-gram paper that anyone wants to buy. Absolutely. The more transparent you get, lower weights, thinner paper, yeah, it becomes more premium. Number one, it's more expensive to make, to get those, but also the experience as you get lighter and thinner to the end consumer is better as well.
What has been some of the consumer feedback that you've listened to and then adjusted development as a result?
Yeah, so I was go back to the Botani Smooth. One of the things that was the look. Love the fact that this cone is natural. This is from our standard wrap. Love the fact that this is natural, looks different, and the smoke and ease of smoke, no harshness throughout your hit. A lot of people want that big old hit.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that's nice about this, some people who want that, that's great. But others want a more smooth, I want to relax, I don't want to cough throughout my entire experience. What we found is those that are packing cones or packing our cones like this are having that nice, smooth experience. And that's that was truly a nice feedback that we've received. On the visual aspect, how can I get it to look like something else? And that's why we looked at Botani Smooth.
Okay. Do you ever do any of your own R&D? Are you a user at all?
Oh, I see. You mean my own focus group?
Yes.
Yeah. Every now and then. Look, I'm the first to admit I'm the big lightweight. And for all of my SWM colleagues out there who know, every now and then, more back in when I was in my college days than I am now. But yeah, my testing is more using hemp to ensure that on the taste, how these papers work, because a couple of hits of a regular, you can forget it for me.
That's fair. Like, were you a believer out of the gate that the hemp-based products would be such an enhancement to the overall experience?
I had a feeling that it would be, yes. And that was what we had felt by using a natural-based botanical, that you could do that. And whether it's this or whether we even our cigarillo style paper, we've been very successful on many big brands in the world. And there's a reason why they continue to use our paper, is because it complements what tobacco blend that they're using. Not only looks good, but it complements their tobacco blend. So we really felt that by transferring that to hemp, we could get that same good feedback. But what we experienced along the way was overwhelmingly a better taste, which is fantastic. So we're trying to get more people to know about this. Your podcast helps, I hope. And to get those brand owners that are out there listening to, hey, talk to your converter, talk to me, I'll get you to the right converter, to try something different, introduce a new SKU or what have you. to show your consumer you're doing things different for them and better for them.
What has been some of that feedback from brands that have bought in early?
Well, that there's number one, they still buy. Repeat order is always good.
Yeah.
But number
Good
two,
indicator.
overwhelmingly, is taste. The consumers, as soon as their, let's say, a container comes in of their finished product, it's sold.
Mm.
And that's the biggest testament right there, that they can't get it in fast enough. So that's a great testament that we've heard of some feedback from our brand owners.
Well, in terms of getting it in fast enough, what does potential manufacturing ramp up look like? And are there any potential hiccups when it comes to the supply chain in terms of getting the product out into the industry fast enough?
Yeah, for sure. Look, one thing that we're doing to help to try to speed it up is our blunt wraps can now be done. They don't have to be in a foil pouch. That's one thing. So they're very pliable. It's very different. They don't crack and dry out. And so we have the ability to now put a blunt wrap with a gum line into a regular booklet, like your traditional lightweight rolling paper, but blunt style. That's one way to get it out faster, because you have a network in Europe and some in the United States that already make booklets. You can just put it on that machine and make the booklets themselves. So we're helping to alleviate that by creating products that will allow them to use current equipment. Same thing goes with cones. Now, cones is a little bit different, and I know you've had some guests on that have talked about cones. And cones is truly one of the last handmade type items in the world, other than traditional cigarettes in Indonesia, out in Southeast Asia, where a lot of stuff is made by hand still. But these are all made by hand. And so automation, cone equipment automation is still a need in the market to help alleviate supply chain issues. Having manufacturing close by that's affordable manufacturing is be a key to getting supply to market more quickly. So cone automation, because making these by hand in the United States would be very expensive to do from a labor perspective. Having automation here in the United States, combined with paper making in the United States, well, boom, you have a very nice captive, so to speak, market where you don't have to worry about global supply chain. So those are some of the things we're helping people work on.
What about hemp flower byproduct? Is there enough supply of that out there? And how do you vet suppliers? I mean, I guess you kind of mentioned that before, making sure all the certifications are in place. So is the supply chain there for hemp byproduct?
Yeah, right now there is. I think right now we don't have a concern on it, but I do understand from the peak, and that's one thing that's always a risk, is that since the peak, the price of hemp flower has come down, 90%? I mean, it's crazy the decline that's occurred. So the farmers aren't getting as much money for what they're growing. Well, that's where we come in from the byproduct post-extraction. We're creating another income stream. We're paying for this product. So guys, go ahead and keep growing. You know that after extraction, you're going to also have another income stream from someone like myself, who's going to purchase this in truckload quantities, who's going to be making paper out of it. And that creates a nice sustainable circle for our farms and for the network, and help to make that even more mature than it is today.
How does that arrangement come about? Does the farmer approach you? Do you approach the farmer? What's that process?
Well, we got a good network out there. So a lot of it is some word of mouth, how we to get to know each other. But yeah, highly recommended farms. Farms are known in regions of the world where we know that natural growth is where previous industry was not. We find the West Coast a little bit cleaner, so to speak, from metals perspective than we do on the East Coast. It's just more consistency, things like that. So we're going to make sure we go to places that give us the best success and best rates. But we also want to make sure that our supply is also consistent. So sticking with certain suppliers that have a nice, consistent product is key. We don't want to jump all over the place. We're not a conglomerate doing that. We are picking and choosing. We do taste tests. We do aroma. We do all those kinds of tests to make sure that we have as consistency as a strain as possible coming in. So we know that our finished product is going to be equally as good each and every time.
Is there an expiration date on the raw materials? Like, is it after they're done being processed at the facility, they need to be in-house to you by X amount of time, otherwise they just won't work?
Yeah, I would say it's more, it's not that they wouldn't work. It's more of, okay, has the product spoiled if it's sitting around? So yeah, that's what we want to make sure. Those are some of the tests that we do certainly we want it within the year that it's been harvested. That's ideal for us. As we got started here, that was definitely the case, and we've tried to stay on that. Always with any natural product, we have shelf life, and that's what I've said. We go through multiple testing. So if we've brought something in, we'll go through a test before we go through our manufacturing. If it's not good, even after we've bought it, we dispose of it. We get rid of it. So we have some good protocols in place to take care of those things. We also, for our products, we have shelf life for our converters. So if I'm shipping you certain bobbins of paper, I've got a traditional shelf life on this. I'll package it so the life stays as long as possible. We'll also have product care tags that we use to make recommendations on how to store the paper, just to make sure it's as fresh as possible each and every time that you're making it. And a lot of our customers are very aware of those type of processes.
Are there any issues using it on like high-speed manufacturing equipment or even printing on it for branding, stuff like that?
Yeah, so no, I guess there's no problem with that. But yes, we can go high speed. So this on a particular, we've been able to run this up to traditional stick. This product can run up to 4,500 sticks per minute. Now, most people don't do that because the medium can't run that fast, but the paper is designed to run that fast. Okay. So for a modified, say, cigarette maker, for someone who's making a stick like this, put it on and go. And people can typically run high speed. And
it's and you can easily print on it?
Yeah, so from a printing, we actually even have a process for our natural product, and I can show you real quick of a pattern. Okay. Where we have a natural solution where we can do, prior to converting, I'm going to show you a sheet. I don't know how well that shows up here for the listener. Can you see that on your monitor?
Yeah, I can see it. This is a big reason everyone needs to watch the video version of this.
Exactly. It's a leaf version of a tobacco leaf on a tobacco style colored hemp wrap. Very cool. So you want to get a cigarillo look, you could even put your own design on that.
Okay. No, I understand that because branding's important for a lot of those brands.
Exactly. Okay. The same thing we do for our rolling papers, and we have a process. You take a traditional sheet, you have the natural gum line here. We can pattern apply a specific gum line that'll allow you to put either your logo on here or some special design, even in the printing of the acacia gum. Okay. So pattern apply. So okay. We like to stay away from any surface printing on these, just because some of the chemistry is not so good. So we try to steer away from that, but certainly embossing, any kind of embossing design, which is done under steam and pressure, those are all things that we do. We call that filigree. So we do common for that for all types of customers.
You had mentioned sustainability. That seems to be a really big issue for a lot of operators in the cannabis industry, is sustainability. But when I talk to people in packaging and other parts of the business, it seems like people like to talk about sustainability, but not necessarily spend on sustainability. So does the sustainability of your product, is that a selling point for some of your customers?
Yeah, I would say yes. Look, I mean, it's what we call a biodiverse product. right? So
Okay.
we're taking a plant material, which is a annual crop, versus wood as an example, that's every 7-8 years for its natural evolution from seed to harvest. And we are using that in our process. Then taking a byproduct, which the hemp is not grown specifically for us, it could be, but for extraction. And we're taking that and reusing that, putting it back into the life cycle for a product. It's biodiverse, creating a new sustainable income stream for farmers, plus recycling that back into the industry. We also, as paper makers, have an initiative internally, because paper making is very energy and water intensive, always has been. And so we have specific programs throughout the whole corporation, not just Botani and our factory that makes the Botani papers, but corporate wide on SWM, what we call thin packed. It's our pact internally to use less natural resources, water, energy, what have you, in order to make the same products. So we have great initiatives internally to do that. We report on it quarterly. And so it's part of our DNA, so to speak.
You had mentioned how you work with both. You work for both craft manufacturers and larger scale MSOs. Is there a difference as to how you work with each, like, or how the value proposition changes for a craft manufacturer or a craft operator versus a larger MSO?
I don't think it does, other than scale. Everybody wants something that's good, that's different, visual differentiation. How can my product stand out in the market? That's why we've created some of these things, whether it be different colors or pattern applied, things like that, but keeping it in a natural aspect. But the key to that also is the ability, as they grow, can we keep up with it? And the answer is yes. From the big guys to the little guys, we have that scale that will fit all the needs. I think probably what's more difficult, if someone just wants one of these instead of a truckload of those. So we do it in all kinds of sizes. We will do that. We prefer to obviously that's why we work with converters and not to consumers, those that have the scale that are making multiple products for multiple different brand owners. But we work together with the team to ensure we do the proper scale up, and everyone's the same. The scale up just may happen to be different. Every brand owner starts like this and moves to like this. At least that's their goal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and of course, everyone wants to sell the truckload, right?
That's exactly right.
What is your just because after launching, in 22, you have a lot of products already under your umbrella. What does your R&D process look like, and what are your expectations for new products that might be hitting the market soon?
Yeah, sometimes our R&D team, and they'll watch this and start laughing. They get mad at us because we always want to. What's the next? Let's do something different. Let's do something next. But no, look, we really, our process is geared toward the consumer and what our clients tell us. If someone tells us that hemp is not what I want anymore, and I want tea, or I want hibiscus, or I want something different, okay, let's consider doing that. And can we create something that gives you the same value, the same taste? Well, not literally the same taste, but complementary taste to what you're trying to do. We'll do that, and we'll work together with our customers to do it. We don't do everything. We can't do everything. But if it makes sense and it can become widespread, we can go into different markets without regulation hurting us. Sure, we'll consider doing that for many customers. As far as down the pipe, well, it's only been 3 weeks for Botani Smooth. So I'd like to think we'd like to get some traction on that. I think with a lot of good feedback so far from those that have looked at it and seen it. We've put it out there on our website, so there should be some at botani.com, so you can see that out there. But yeah, some things, I don't know, we're going to get visual differentiation. One thing, a little bit more emphasis, something that we can do is we can add flavor to our paper. Mostly it's done by a converter, But if you want to put something in a booklet and you want a subtle undertone, well, if you want banana and you want grape, or you want tropical, vanilla, well, we can do that. So we can do a little bit of anything depending on what the customer is looking for and look to do.
Are your clients asking for anything that you're not capable of manufacturing?
Yeah, every now and then, but if I say it, then it'll give away who that is, and I won't do that.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I have just a weird current event question, and it has to do with paper making more than the cannabis industry. But have you heard the issues of that came up with the paper mill in northern Michigan regarding the blastomycosis or what outbreak?
Vaguely understand that. Yeah, maybe.
No.
Maybe.
Okay. No, I was just curious. And if not, that's fine. We don't have to speak on it on the podcast. It was just something I was curious. I had a paper maker. There was an issue at a paper mill, so I figured I'd see if you had read about it.
Okay. No, I'm not familiar with what actually took place, but certainly whenever that's why we do as much testing as we do, because you always have those issues with regard to whether they're microbials or what have you, that something can happen. You got to make sure your processes are in place. Our factory has its own water and waste treatment facilities on site, and all of them do throughout our whole global footprint. And it's a must that the water coming in, the water going out is cleaner than the water coming in.
Right.
And that's kind of the goal. That's the kind of mindset that you have to have. And that's why paper making processes are not easy to replicate throughout the world. It's very, very capital intensive. So for me to set up shop, my Botani factory someplace else, we got to have a lot of cash. We're talking a lot of zeros in order to do that. So,
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. Is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself, Botani, or maybe where to get some more information?
Well, yeah, look, just to know that we're in it for the long haul. We got some new products. Botani is the neophyte on the street right now, trying to help brand owners become successful, but know that we're backed by a really large company that's been doing this for a long time, making big brands successful. So despite big brands being successful, we also make little brands successful as well. We have ways in which we can help you do that. And so that's kind of what our forte is. I do encourage you to go out to botani.com. You can see more of what we're doing. There's a video. It might be a little bit long for some, but it's about 16 minutes long. It talks about our factory in New York State, and the Catskills there. And so it's really kind of a cool video that shows some of the guys who work there, shows a little bit about the factory and who's worked there and the heritage that factory has had for the past 200 years. So
excellent. Well, and I'll make sure to include a link to that video in the description of the podcast so they can find it pretty easy.
Terrific. I appreciate it.
Well, Alex, thank you again for joining me today. It was very insightful, an entirely different part of the industry that I haven't heard about previously, and thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I hope your viewership likes it as well.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm sure they love it. All right. But before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving us a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com and subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Alex Boone, Managing Director of Botani, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.